Hello and welcome. This is a review of the cleaning performance of the Roborock Q10 S5. The robot uses a more or less standard brush that mainly relies on bristles for cleaning, along with a cleaning head about which we have to talk in more detail afterwards. Alright, let's start with the cleaning test on my carpets. For this test I mainly use certified test dust, which simulates typical household dust. The dirt mat shown at the bottom of the image is additionally soiled with 10 grams of bird sand, which is applied in small spots. For the dirt mat I also run a test using 5 grams of test dust. The carpets shown at the top of the image are treated with 10 grams of test dust as well, which has been lightly worked into the fibers. Both carpets have a pile height of about 2 centimeters. However, the carpet with the red pile is much denser compared to the dark blue one, which has a very soft pile. Cleaning is performed at the maximum suction level, using the checkerboard pattern wherever it makes sense. On the red carpet, that pattern is actually a disadvantage, since the carpet has a preferred cleaning direction. For this robot, the cleaning pattern is set to deep, which also makes a difference and is settable for vacuum-only runs, something I'll go into more detail about later. The final results are recorded after 14 cleaning passes for the carpets and after 7 cleaning passes for the dirt mat. Alright, let's take a look at the robot results compared to my current top 7. We'll start with the dirt mat and the bird sand pickup. The results for the Roborock Q10 are always marked in red. As we can see, the robot achieved a strong 97% here, putting it ahead of the Roborock S7, which had previously topped the internal Roborock comparison chart. But more on that later. Overall, the result for bird sand pickup is really good, earning the Q10 a spot in the top 7. Next, we move on to the test dust pickup on the dirt mat, where we can see that the Roborock Q10 achieves a very good 84%. This means it also secures a spot in the top 3, and that result is truly impressive for several reasons that I'll go into a bit later. It clearly outperforms quite a bit of the higher priced competition. When we look at the results for the dark blue carpet with a very soft pile, we can see that the robot doesn't perform quite as strongly as before. Here it clearly drops out of the top 3 or top 5 range. Nevertheless, the robot still performs very well overall compared to many other competitors, achieving 69%, which earns it a spot in the top 7, pushing both the Roborock S7 and the Roomba 980 out of the list. We can also see here how important it is to test different types of carpets, something I'll come back to later. Finally, we come to my most difficult carpet to clean, the red one. Here we can see that the Roborock Q10 drops off quite a bit compared to the top 3 or even the top 5 performers. It achieved a result of 34%, which isn't enough to make it into the top 7. In this test, the robot also performs slightly worse than the Roborock S7. I'll go into a bit more detail on that later when we take another look at the results within the Roborock lineup specifically. Before we get to that, let's take a look at the Hardfloor results. For this test I also use certified test dust. It's a bit finer than the one used for the carpet tests. This dust also simulates typical household dust that you'd find on hard floors. The robots are allowed to make 8 cleaning passes over the test surface, which is a slightly textured laminate. Of course, this is done at the maximum suction level. Devices that also feature a mopping function are tested again, first with 8 vacuuming passes and then with an additional 2 mopping passes using a water flow rate suitable for laminate flooring. In most cases, that's the medium setting. The checkerboard pattern is used again. After all passes are completed, I check the surface and the grooves with a microfiber cloth to see if any dust residues remain. Alright, let's take a look at the results, and as we can see, they're not particularly impressive. Using only the vacuuming function, both the grooves and the surface itself remain quite dusty. Really good robot vacuums can handle this without any trouble, and clean both the surface and grooves. Cordless stick vacuums typically need 2 to 4 passes to clean the tested area. Among robot vacuums, only the Dyson Visnav has managed to completely remove the dust in this test so far. As for hybrid models, the iRobot Roomba Max 705 Combo and 205 Combo were the only ones also able to achieve a totally clean end result thanks to their used Y pattern for mopping. You can find detailed tests on those on my channel. Now, speaking of the mopping function, unfortunately, things don't look much better here either. The grooves remain dusty, which was somewhat expected, since even robots with mop rollers or mop pads usually can't handle that, with the exceptions already mentioned. However, in this case, even the surface remains dirty, and while that doesn't necessarily have to be the case, even with this simple mopping function, unfortunately, that's how it turned out here. In terms of raw performance data, I measured the Roborock Q10 at around 3900 Pascal, sealed at the cleaning head and about 16 CFM of airflow. On paper, those are solid numbers, a very good suction number, and a decent airflow value. But the truth is that also both the cleaning head and the main brush play a crucial role in real-world cleaning performance, and the given performance of the overall setup also depends on the surface to be cleaned. And when it comes to the cleaning head, the Q10 really doesn't have much to offer. It's simply a rigid construction. If we compare that to the Roborock S7, which was marketed with a highly adaptive cleaning head, the difference is like night and day. Design factors like this effectively cancel out the Q10's superior measured specs. The higher raw suction and airflow just don't translate into a much better cleaning compared to the mentioned S7 with measured 900 Pascal and 12 CFM, that performed pretty similar in almost all tests. If the factor rubber versus bristle brush does not kick in much on the red carpet. See top left, every factor plays a role: the cleaning head, the generated suction pressure, the available airflow, and also the type of main brush. The brush needs to be able to really part and separate the pile effectively. In that regard, rubber brushes generally have an advantage over pure bristle brushes, like the ones used on the Q10. And you can clearly see that here in the results, where the S7 performs slightly better than the Q10. The exact opposite can be seen with the dirt mat and dust pickup, shown at the bottom right. In that case, the Q10 performs significantly better than the S7, because bristle brushes have an advantage there, and the slightly higher airflow also helps. However, when dealing with heavier particles of the sand contamination, that bristle advantage no longer matters much, and the overall interaction of the individual factors becomes more important again, which is reflected in the nearly identical results between the Q10 and S7. On the dark blue carpet with a very soft pile, airflow becomes a more critical factor, having the Q10 outperforming the S7. Looking at the overall Roborock results, it's clear that you really shouldn't put too much stock in the manufacturer's claimed cleaning performance figures. The marketing promises don't reflect what actually happens in real-world testing, as I have already mentioned many times and shown with my tests. You can also see just how big of an impact the main brush can have on a robot's performance in my Dream X40 test, where I tested both available main brush types. The link is in the description. Another factor that likely contributed to the Q10's strong result, especially on the dirt mat, is the cleaning pattern setting. Specifically, the deep pattern. With this setting, the robot passes over the solid area much more frequently, especially along the vertical lines. Of course, I always use the maximum performance settings in my test, so for me this is a completely valid result. If other robots don't offer such options, that's simply part of the comparison. How much of an impact the setting really has for my shown long-term testing is something I have to evaluate in more detail in the future. You can also see how much influence cleaning patterns can have by looking at the Dyson Viz nav result for the dirt mat. There I recorded data across different firmware versions. With the latest firmware, the robot's navigation improved overall. It now moves strictly in straight lines. However, that also means it can only clean in one direction on these carpets, since the robot doesn't support a checkerboard pattern. With the older firmware, where the robot moved in a spiral pattern, there was occasionally a change between horizontal and vertical lines, and that actually led to better performance on this carpet. As shown in the results overview, this demonstrates just how much cleaning patterns and movement algorithms can affect cleaning outcomes. Alright, let's get to the conclusion. As we've seen, the carpet performance was solid overall, even outperforming many more expensive models. Especially within Roborock's own lineup, this device is basically the top performer alongside the S7 in my tests. It's just a shame that such a poor cleaning head design was used here. When it comes to hard floor performance, there's clearly still room for improvement, mainly due to the reasons already mentioned, the cleaning head and the relatively low airflow compared to the better performing models. If you're aware of these weaknesses, particularly regarding the mopping function, then this robot might still be a good option, since you're really not missing out on much. As we've seen, more expensive gimmicky devices don't necessarily perform any better. So you can definitely bring home an affordable everyday helper to pick up crumbs and light dirt. That said, there's still a bit of a question mark when it comes to the software and the build quality. I've already made a small teardown video about that, because I'm not entirely sure whether this unit is actually produced by Roborock themselves, but that's still uncertain. I also had a bug that the robot was complaining about a missing mop attachment right at the start of vacuum-only runs. If you enjoyed the video and found it helpful, I'd really appreciate a subscription, a thumbs up, and any additional support. You'll find the links for that in the description. Thanks for watching and see you next time. Bye.